You're listening to Strange by Nature, your guide to the strange, weird, unbelievable, and improbable wonders of the natural world.
Hello, everyone, and thanks for being here today. I'm Kirk Mona, and joining me are Rachel Gimza and Victoria Thompson. We're all naturalists who together have scoured the world for weird and wonderful wonders, just to please your mammalian brain's desire for novelty. Isn't that nice? Let's do this.
Hey, welcome to the show. Good to see you. We are back.
It's good to be here as usual.
We are back. Once again, Rachel is off cavorting in California with the redwoods. So it's just going to be me and Kirk this week, but we have a really good show lined up for you, and I am going to kick things off. Kirk with a little severe weather quiz. All right, so places to go and not to go in a thunderstorm. Go.
Okay. Places to go and not to go.
Yeah.
Do not go to Oklahoma.
Sure, fair enough.
I meant like,
okay, so let's say you're out on a hike. What should you do?
Yes. Oh, you're outdoors.
Yeah.
Okay. Get to a low spot.
Obviously best to go indoors if you can get indoors. But if you can't, get to a low spot.
Get to a low spot. Generally, you want to stay away from trees that are going to fall on you, if all possible.
Yes.
Keep an eye out for that. Basically, get somewhere low and try to get some cover if you can.
Exactly. Staying away from trees. That is what we all learn. Don't go stand under a tree in a thunderstorm, right? And
yeah. The whole thunder part is a clue that there's lightning involved.
The lightning is the problem, not the thunder.
Don't be near the tall thing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, the lightning is going to be generally attracted to the tallest thing nearby. In many cases, that is a tall tree, especially an isolated tall tree. And have you ever seen a tree that had been struck by lightning?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
It's it kind of depends what happens, but there's a couple things can happen, but none of them are particularly pretty.
Exactly. Yeah. The damage can vary a lot from something like a limited sort of stripy scar down one side of the tree to much more extensive damage. In some cases, all of the bark can explode off of a tree.
Yeah.
Or in very unlucky cases, the whole tree can be pretty much blown to smithereens.
I think it can basically instantly boil all the water in every cell, right? And that could kind of do some damage. Make some pressure there.
Yeah, exactly. That's it. That's what happens. The lightning, the electricity from the lightning heats up the sap super hot, and it just turns to steam and blows the whole thing apart.
It's got nowhere to go but out. Right?
I mean, wood itself is not a good conductor of electricity, but the sap can be any sort of water that it can find. Needless to say, this is generally not good for the tree. I mean, if the damage is superficial, trees can and do survive a lightning strike, but sometimes even if a tree appears to be basically okay, there can be deeper damage that's not visible, and it can make the tree more susceptible to fungus and insects and so forth. So it can dramatically shorten the tree's life, even if it doesn't die right away.
That makes sense.
Yeah. In tropical rainforests, lightning can be even more devastating, partly because there's just a lot more water around, and partly because of the trees are more connected in some ways. So, like, there are all these vines that are found in tropical forest lianas, and so the electricity can travel along those and across the canopy to other trees.
Oh, wow.
So not just the tree that was
struck,
really but like surrounding trees can be damaged or killed.
Yeah, and I suppose if it doesn't go to ground, it could just go from tree to tree to tree to tree to tree.
Yes, it can. And in fact, unlike with temperate forest trees, it's less often the trunk that's affected and more often the crown of the tree, which often just starts to die back and eventually kills the tree.
Oh, wow.
So I feel like all of this sort of more or less makes sense. But what if I told you that there is a tree that likes to be struck by lightning? Even seems to seek it out.
Seek it out?
Yes.
Victoria, that is a wild thing to say. The only thing that gives me pause to not think that that's completely nuts is that I know there are trees that like fire.
Uh-huh.
So I could see a connection there, but I'm
Sure.
so intrigued where you're going to go with this.
Well, scientists believe that they have discovered such a tree. It's found in the tropical forests of Panama, and it's called the Almendro, which, if I'm not mistaken, just means almond in Spanish. But the scientific name is Dipteryx oleifera. It's not the same as like almond, but
Not the same. Okay.
apparently its seeds are kind of almond-like, and it's used by humans also for its hard, strong wood.
Okay.
They are also an important source of food for wildlife, by the by, but it's a notably tall tree. They can grow up to about 50 meters, so 165 feet, which is, quite tall. Not redwood tall, but very tall.
No, yeah.
That's about 30% taller than most other trees in the area.
So does that make it like a super-canopy tree that stands above the rest of the forest?
Yeah, and in fact...
those are so cool.
Yeah, the crown is also very wide, so like about 50% larger than most other trees' crown.
Whoa, okay.
So as you can imagine,
amazing.
A tree like that might get struck by lightning kind of frequently.
Yeah, it's going to get hit.
And Dr. Evan Gora of the Smithsonian Tropical Research Institute had noticed that some trees in the rainforest were seeming to survive lightning strikes better than others. So he set out to study this phenomenon. And he and his team were actually able to create an instrument system that was able to pinpoint which tree was struck by lightning during a storm.
Okay, cool.
So they would get this data from the instruments, and then they would go out into the field and observe the trees in the surrounding area.
What happened?
And they gathered data on 94 lightning strikes, locating the tree for each one, and 9 of them were almendros.
Interesting.
One of which was actually struck twice.
Okay.
So for other types of trees, within 2 years of being struck, 64% of them had died. Well, all of the almendros were not just living, but flourishing.
They're all supercharged.
Yeah. They have superpowers. Lightning Tree. In fact, the almendros benefited from the lightning strikes because the other trees around them were killed because of those connections.
Oh, no way.
Yeah, so it gave them more space and access to light as all these other trees around them died off from the lightning strike. And getting light is a huge point of competition, especially in tropical forests. Any forest, but tropical forests especially.
Oh, especially, yeah.
And Dr. Gora and his colleagues were even able to calculate that other species of tree living near an almendro were 48% more likely to be killed by lightning compared to those living near other species of tree.
So bad neighbor to have, basically.
Yes. In one case, 57 trees around a single almendro were killed by one lightning strike to the almendro.
That's brutal.
Yeah. And another benefit to the almendro is that the lightning strikes will kill off any lianas. These are parasitic vines that are growing on the tree. And these vines will climb up and they'll also compete for light with the tree.
Yeah. Oh, of course, yeah.
So it's just sort of shaken off its parasites with these lightning strikes as well.
Wow.
I just thought this was amazing. And, we don't know for sure exactly how the almendro avoids being damaged by lightning itself.
No, that was my next question.
Well, we have a good idea. I would say we have a very good idea. It just hasn't been tested in experiment.
Hasn't been proven and tested. Okay.
So
what's the hypothesis?
The almendro has particularly low electrical resistance of its wood. Now, the higher the resistance, the less that the electricity wants to travel through it. That means the more that things are going to heat up. If there's less electrical resistance, the electricity is going to flow more easily and heat up the water in the tree less.
Yeah.
So Dr. Gora and his colleagues were hypothesizing that is likely what is going on.
So the electricity is just essentially passing
through
very quickly and easily. fascinating.
Yes.
The thing that pops into my head when you talk about like these super canopy trees, we used to have massive super canopy trees in the eastern United States, and that was the
American chestnut.
The American chestnut, yeah. And you kind of wonder, did they have a similar thing going on?
Oh yeah,
because they would probably get hit by lightning too. I wonder if there's other. It'd be a cool ground of research to study other super canopy trees in areas that experience lightning to see, is this a common. Is this process evolved before? Is this a common thing, or is this unique to this tree? That would be so fascinating to study.
It would be. They were looking at other species. I didn't get into this part, but they were looking at other sort of candidate species that might also have lightning resistance as well in the area. So cool. lots of scope for further research.
It does remind me, when you started off asking if this, and I said, well, it reminds me of the trees that like fire. It was not that they're using the lightning to start a fire or anything, but it's a similar kind of mechanism where you are encouraging some sort of environmental thing to happen that benefits you by hurting your neighbors. Like the fire, if you can survive that fire, or if your seed sort of can survive the fire, it benefits you to wipe out your competition. This is, I guess, not that surprising because it's really just the same thing, but using a different mechanism.
Yeah, that's a good way of looking at it.
Plants are going to be, if there's an advantage to be had, they're going to find it.
Absolutely. For sure.
So cool.
Well, my sources this week were that paper by Dr. Gora and his colleagues. It was published very recently in February 2025 in The New Phytologist. How some tropical trees benefit from being struck by lightning, evidence for Dipteryx, oleifera, and other large-statured trees. And then a couple articles about that paper in Smithsonian Magazine and in the New York Times. And then also some good information about what happens to trees in general when they're struck by lightning from Alabama A&M Extension.
Excellent. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we're going to take a little break. And when we come back, be interested to hear what you have.
Hey, everybody. Kirk here. I want to take a minute here to tell you about another podcast, because if you like our show, I think you might also like a show called Tiny Matters. It's a science-based podcast about the little things that can have a big impact on our society, past and present. Tiny Matters hosts and former scientists Sam Jones and Deepak Chakravarty tackle questions like, why is wildlife thriving near the Chernobyl disaster site? How was IVF invented? Why did the dodo bird really go extinct? And does life exist beyond Earth? Sam and Deepak break these complex topics down into understandable segments while packing in captivating stories and history and embracing the awe and messiness that is science. So you should join them. New episodes of Tiny Matters drop every Wednesday, wherever you listen to podcasts. Check them out. Welcome back, everyone. Victoria, buckle up.
Okay.
This week's topic is rough.
Oh, dear.
But to be fair, I don't mean ROUGH rough. I mean RUFF rough.
What? Wait. Kirk, no. Like the bird?
The bird.
Okay, they also have a weird sex chromosome thing going on, and I was possibly going to talk about them last week.
I know. Last week when you were talking about the weird sex chromosome thing, I was like, oh my God, is she about to talk about the topic I'm planning on doing next week? And you didn't, thankfully. So this is going to be like an amazing add-on to last week's topic you had. This is so but the serendipity on this is so weird because this isn't based on some sort of like thing that was in the news or anything. I was just like, I should talk about this. This is really cool. And then I had got it all researched and mostly written up. And then last week you're like, here's my topic. And I'm like, no way. This is so cool. I am talking about the bird.
I had a tab or one or two tabs open in my computer with information about ruffs. And I was like, I can't get into this. I have enough to talk about with sparrows.
So you know what I'm going to talk about. Our listeners are like, what? I have no idea what's going on. The bird, the ruff, is a pretty amazing bird, but they are deeply weird in a number of ways. And so I want to start off with the obvious one and the reason for their name. The male ruff has this amazing fluffy circle of puffed up feathers around their neck that makes it look like they're wearing one of those old-fashioned neck ruffs, like from the 1600s, if you can picture that. And ruffs are basically neck collars that have gotten way out of hand. We actually think the word originally came from the word ruffle, meaning pleated or frilly fabric. And like they say, collars on shirts just started to get bigger and bigger and bigger. Eventually, the ruff you put on became a separate clothing thing that would actually be like put on. But they got, in the 1600s, they got way out of control in Europe with the ruffs. We don't see them much anymore these days. That's probably a good thing. And we think the word like ruff in birds is actually a reference to the ruffs that people wore.
Sure.
Because the bird had a different name prior to the 1600s. We see the bird referred to as a ruff for the first time in literature in the year 1634, right around when the fashion was, really getting going. So, but I think before that they were called a ree, R-E-E. And it's just like, people are like, once the fashion took off, there was no going back. The bird was called a ruff. So whereas a ruff in fashion is usually white, in the bird, the ruff of the ruff is usually brown feathers. They're not really distinct from the rest of most of the body feathers. The ruff of feathers on a bird is essentially the same as the ruff of fashion on humans. It's a fashion statement for birds. It's the male birds, of course. They grow these wild displays of feathers in an attempt to woo the ladies. Like, look at my ruff. Isn't this fancy? Now, we see this in all kinds of species of birds, right? The male birds are often being a show-off. And that is really no big surprise to us. Males of many species can be show-offs. But while birds can use songs and behaviors to show off, it's often the feathers where they can really make a big show of it. Feathers can be crazy colors, they can be wild lengths, they can be different sizes and shapes. And this seems to be true of almost all types of feathers, like the different types of feathers on the body. Courtship display feathers can be tail feathers, like think about a turkey or a peacock. You can have tufted crests that stick up, like a northern cardinal. You can have bright colored breast feathers, like a European robin. Or in the case of the ruff, you can basically just have these wild neck feathers, right?
Yep.
So in the grand scheme of wild bird feathers, the ruff is interesting, but it's nothing like some of the more extreme examples out there. It's no peacock, right?
Yeah.
I mean, even a turkey probably kind of, shows it up. So what really makes the ruff strange and interesting is that the actual situation is far more complicated than the simplified picture I painted at the beginning. So ruffs are shorebirds. They're found in Western Europe, Africa, Southern Asia, and Australia. They're a type of sandpiper, if you're familiar with sandpipers. If you happen to live in an area where they're found, you can go watch the males trying to court the females in the spring as they strut around in grass or like a little patch of dirt. And while the males have the large ornamental ruff around their necks, which kind of contrasts with like a black belly and some orange facial skin, the females are, how do I say it? They're exceedingly dull. So if you can picture a camouflaged brown shorebird, then you probably have a pretty good image of what a female ruff looks like every other brown shorebird. And what's missing from this story, though, is that if you were to go and watch the courtship rituals at a lek, and a lek is basically, I like to think of it as like nature's dance floor for showing off.
Yep.
So if you were to visit a lek, you would find there's often what looks like another species of shorebird hanging out. And this bird is larger than the female, but smaller than the male. And it looks very different from both of them, as it's almost entirely white. And they do have a bit of a ruff, but it isn't as large or as flamboyant as the classic ruff on the male that I described. this is just me personally. I think it looks a bit like big curly hair, like big locks of curly hair, or maybe like a white curly mullet than it does like an actual 360-degree ruff. It's kind of more to the sides and the back. And it does have this big kind of like, I don't know, it gives me these like 1970s big hair vibe, like big curls, kind of big wavy curls.
Yeah.
So you'd be right in asking, what is this other species of bird doing there during the middle of this courtship thing between the male and female ruff? And it turns out that this white bird is also what, Victoria?
A ruff.
It's a ruff. It's the same species. And this is so wild. There's two different versions of male ruffs. So the brown one I described is known as a territorial male, and they make up 84% of the male population. And within the lek, or again, as I like to call it, the bird dance floor, each territorial male holds down a territory of a little bit over 1 square meter.
That's not very big.
The territory they're referring to, not big. It's not their territory. When they call them a territorial male, they're not referring to like their whole territory where they would range. It's the territory of their dance spot. Yeah, on the lek. The lek is where all the birds are hanging out, and this is their spot on the lek, is their territory. And it's quite small. It's because they don't do a crazy dance going all over the place. Say, this is good. This little patch of dirt, it's about a square meter. I'm good. And the dance they do is pretty complex. They flutter their wings. They jump up and down. They like stand upright looking all tall and big, and then they crouch down low with their ruff all fluffed up. And they kind of do this dance over and over. And so that's 84% of the population. 16% of the males, though, have taken a different strategy. They're what's called satellite males. And they aren't out there on the dance floor. They're just hanging out watching the show, as it were. I like to think of them as like the announcer, or perhaps like the hype squad getting the crowd going at a breakdancing competition. If you ever watch ESPN, the Ocho, you know what I'm talking about. So their bright white coloration certainly attracts attention. It's like a big white leisure suit. Their goal, though, is to mate with one of the females that has come to watch the show that the territorial male is putting on. And a well-performing male will attract a lot of attention, and so there's likely more females than he can breed with, and so the satellite male ends up mating with some of the crowd that gathers. And you'd think that that would be kind of a strange arrangement, and that you have to be kind of like secretive about what they're doing. The satellite male mating with females that show up is definitely competition with a territorial male, you would think. And it would stand to reason that then like that territorial male would try to drive them out of their territory, but they don't. And this is why I like to think of them as like the hype squad, because and this maybe because they're such bright white, that bright white appearance of the satellite males, and there can be multiple satellite males around a territorial male. It could be that like that visually attracts like a greater variety of females. And we do see that when there are satellite males present, even more of the ladies show up to like see what this dance is all about.
Interesting.
So it definitely benefits the territorial male to have the satellite males around, because they basically bring in more ladies to the nightclub, and they're like, oh, come check it out. There's this great dance going on, right? So like, this is just so wild. It's basically a win-win for both types of males to have this arrangement.
What a system.
And they both end up getting to mate. And it's a wild system.
So it's almost like you could say that the satellite males are the territorial males' wingmen.
Absolutely. Love it. Definitely their wingman. Yes. Now, that is a wild story. The idea that there are two different plumages and behaviors that go with them when it comes to reproductive success. But the story gets even weirder.
No.
All right? Yes. In 2006, a third type of plumage was discovered in male ruffs. They'd always been there. We just never noticed them because of their amazing camouflage. Apparently, about 1% of the male ruff population are smaller and brown and look almost identical to the females.
Right.
And that's why we just didn't know they were there. They are males in disguise, and they also go to attend to the lek. And when they're there, they secretly mate with the females, perhaps without the other males even knowing they're there, which is, that's a strategy. That's one way to do it. But that may not actually be what's going on. I think that was maybe the initial assumption. We now think it's possible, and I did find references to this, they seem to suggest that the other males actually do know that these other males are there, and they do know what's going on, but they seem to think that having these sort of pseudo females around actually attracts even more females to the lek. It may be as simple as females see another bird at the party that looks like them, looks like a female, and they're like, oh, hey, this must be a cool party to be at. There's other females here. I should go check it out, right? So we don't, I think, quite know if that's what's going on yet, but it seems like that could be part of this equation. So that's what makes the Ruff such an absolutely strange species. There are 3 distinctly different types of males. They seem to all work together in very different ways, each successfully reproducing while having a complex social hierarchy. And we certainly have lots of other birds, like I mentioned turkeys, for example, that have a lek where the males dance and the females come to watch, that don't have this whole system of 3 different males. So this is just a weird thing that has evolved in Ruffs, and when I learned about this, I was like, this is so cool, so amazing. And then when you were talking about your topic last week, I'm like, no way, this is such a cool tie-in. So I was really happy to talk about it. I will tell you my sources for this was All About Birds and Wikipedia.
Nice. Wow. Yeah. Do we know much about like genetics of how this works?
I did not find anything about that. Okay. But after hearing your topic with the sparrows, now I'm like, okay, I want to dig more into this and find out what the genetic component looks like. Is this a similar kind of situation? Like, because how does it happen?
Yeah.
How do some males end up being the territorial ones, and some end up being the satellite ones, and then some being the ones that just look like the females? Like, how does that end up? What's the physiology? What's the biology? What's the genetic process by which that happens? I'm not sure we know yet, but it's a very, very cool area.
Wow, that's so neat. And what a coincidence about our topics from one week to the next. That's just really
it would have been even more funny if that was the topic I did last week, but very cool to follow on with what you did there.
Well, I did briefly, when you started talking about the bristlecone pines last week, I briefly thought about switching the order of my topics, because I had a tree topic to go along with your tree topic with the trees that are struck by lightning. But
we also switched topics that way. That's really funny. Oh man,
what could have been?
Well, we dodged the bullet. We once again have avoided having the same topic on the show. I know I've heard from some of the fans out there, some of the listeners are like excitedly awaiting the time when that happens, and some are dreading it. And all I can say is we feel the same way.
Yeah.
I have no idea if it'll ever happen, but keep listening. That's one way for sure to find out.
I guess that's all we got tonight. So
that's it. Everyone, thanks for being here. Have a good night. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone, for listening to today's show. Be sure to subscribe. New episodes drop every Wednesday, and we love sharing this strange world with all our listeners. If you would be so kind as to leave us a 5-star rating and review wherever you get your podcasts, that would be great. It lets other lovers of the strange discover the show. You can reach us by searching for Strange by Nature Podcast on Instagram, Facebook, and Blue Sky. You can send us an email as well. Our address is contact@strangebynaturepodcast.com. If you want more information about the show, you can check out our website, strangebynaturepodcast.com, and you can support the show and get ad-free episodes at patreon.com/strangebynature. Until next week, get outside, stay curious, and embrace the strange.